11 straight years of Mario Kart 8 and we're finally free. I mean, sure, there was the phone game and the RC cars, but Mario Kart World is the real Mario Kart 9, and they made sure it wasn't just more 8s. It's an expression of freedom, an open world loaded with secrets, old tracks recreated that weren't flashy enough to be main courses, mini challenges, the new gimmick is parkour, where rail grinding turns into wall riding, which turns into grinding, which turns into skipping half a lap, and every track exists within the open world, and it all fits together like a beautiful little puzzle. There's not a whole ton of prelude needed here. I'm about the 1 billionth person to make a video on this game. Mario Kart World launched with the Switch 2 this year, 2025, and has already become an instant hit. Mario Kart World feels like the beginning of a new era for Mario Kart, although I guess a lot of Mario is going through that right now with Bonanza and Wonder. The game is still like 70% the same as 8, but separates itself strongly from the prior era of Mario Kart that roughly covers DS, Wii, 7, and 8, all of which functionally serve as small incremental upgrades on each other, with similar design philosophies. World is a relatively freeing game, but also revels in the chaos of the series. Doing well isn't just a matter of optimal kart setup and drifting, but also routing, as many, not all, but many tracks have a lot of shortcuts via the enhanced trick system, which allows racers to ride along any wall, grind rails, do tricks off of them and back onto them, trick repeatedly into curve walls for boosts, and trick off of obstacles in the environment while airborne. My gameplay isn't nearly that impressive, but the speedrun stuff going on here is insanity. People are so good at this game, it's insane. That's really the most major change in the second-to-second racing. The game does generally feel a little bit slower than 8, but a part of that is mitigated by the freeform nature of the thing and the opportunity to take and make shortcuts. On the other hand, kart customization is scrapped, which is probably for the best. The game has a decent number of different attributed karts. The standard ones, bikes, which tend to be a little lighter but accelerate quicker, and ATVs, which live somewhere between. There are generally better and worse character and kart combinations, but removing all that extra stuff around it makes the game generally more accessible by removing the need to read into how the stinky bippy wheels work better for the sloppy toppy bike than the dippity-doo wheels, and instead turn the focus onto the trick system and racing. All of this high-skill play is of course countered by chaos. Sheer 24-player chaos. Items are flying constantly, players get bunched up, shake and bake off each other like Ricky Bobby, bump each other over. The game just loves to keep you on your toes. Defensive items are arguably more important than ever, although the impact of items and even falling off of stage are greatly lessened with lower stun times to keep you competitive in the 24-player mess. The game tries its best to make races as comebackable as they are frantic. On the topic of items, the selection is good. A lot of the selection is as you would expect. Red, green, and blue shells, bananas, fire and ice flowers, mushrooms and gold mushrooms. Some of these returning items have pretty cool tweaks. The Mega Mushroom is incredibly strong after its long absence since Wii, letting you farm shake and bakes like crazy while offering a decent speed boost, completely letting you go off-road, and crushing opponents you touch, which is incredible on transition tracks. The hammers now linger in the ground, acting as obstacles briefly, and the feather technically is still just a jump button, but one that opens up a lot of crazy routing via wall driving and has gone from a joke to kinda crazy. People are still discovering feather unique shortcuts to this day, just ways that you can completely break a track by one simple feather jump. There are only 4 new items. Dash food can be found in drive-thrus during transitions and are weaker mushrooms, but also changes your character's costume to one based on the region they're in, if the character has costumes and has one for that area, which also unlocks it permanently for use. The gold shell travels down the middle of the track, leaving coins behind in its wake. It can really mess up a bunched group during a transition, but often feeds your opponent's coins if they're ahead of you, further accelerating them past you, which never feels quite great. The question mark block is a coin dispenser, and Kamek. Oh, Kamek. Kamek is far and away the rarest item in the game and has a pretty cool effect, on paper. Depending on the course, Kamek will spawn a bunch of different enemies en masse, each serving as obstacles. Cataquacks will chase you around and try to flip you into the air. Charge and Chucks dash in straight lines back and forth. Cheeps flop around. This is really fun, actually. I like this a lot as a twist on the gameplay. And also, Kamek changes all players in front of the user of the item into NPC characters, briefly changing their stats, but also unlocking those characters permanently. It is very tedious to get these characters, especially since there's some amount of RNG, and which character Kamek changes you into is a little bit up in the air. And maybe that's the point. You're not supposed to worry about it, they're a bonus, but it sure does suck to have that more locked characters icon on the character select screen. Also, it'd be nice if costumes were shoved into a sub-menu or something. This character select screen is a fucking mess, especially on Sorted. Also, it'd be nice if, any of the unlockables, there's a couple unlockable characters tied to the Grand Prix mode. Probably be nice if like the NPC characters were unlocked through the open world by doing like missions or challenges or something instead of whatever this is. I think it'd be a lot less tedious and really incentivize exploring. The main modes are all accounted for, of course, but each features a bit of a change as a result of the open worlds. What an odd thing I have to say. Grand Prix is kinda the same, 4 tracks in a row with points awarded for placement. There's also always a rival NPC who wins most of the time unless they really get fucked over by items, which keeps the NPCs from self-sabotaging by beating each other and just fucking up their point spreads. And these rival characters are unlocked for beating the cup. However, after the first track, each track plays out as its transition course leading into a single lap. I'm something of a transition defender. I think these long, mostly straight tracks can have some interesting stuff. A lot of them are traffic tracks with chaos in the cars, and offer good opportunities for getting ahead or falling behind based on items. And they do have some niche shortcuts depending on their layout. Plus there's a few that are pretty unique, like the ones that go through Boo Cinema often have you go through the Boo Mansion courses from Super Mario Kart, which have just been turned into little overworld spots because they weren't interesting enough to be full tracks. I think that stuff's pretty cool. But it is hard to deny that some tracks get royally screwed by only being one lap, especially when it comes to laps like Crown City, which have layouts that change lap to lap, in which most of their layout is segmented out across multiple cups, or is single race or time trial exclusive, and also really benefits the first track in a cup as far as memorability goes. It's an especially odd choice as the new mode Knockout Tour, a battle royale where players are dropped out of the game at each checkpoint, primarily consists of these transition tracks, and that format and the chaos that comes from it match up really well. Occasionally crossing you through tracks is a little treat. It's a very fun mode that feels more fitting for these kind of transition tracks. Online has also been controversial as these transition tracks often fill up lobby selection, and a patch added these transitions to the random button selection, in response to players dodging them by selecting it. Even if you see some value in these transitions, it would be nice to have more time with the highlights of the game, the actual tracks. For battle mode, I wish it was good. Like the races, the battle mode is a 24-man frenzy spread across areas from the open world. Mario Bros. Circuit, Moo Moo Meadows, Peach Stadium, Salty Salty Speedway, Dino Dino Jungle, and DK Pass, all of which are segments from tracks. Chain Chomp Desert, a portion of the world unassociated with the track, and Big Donut, a recreation of an N64 battle area, which again is not part of a track but exists in the open world. Problem is, most of these are too big for their own good, even with 24 players, to the point that you're often cruising around looking for stuff to do, especially prevalent in DK Pass and Moo Moo Meadows. Some courses work really well. I actually really enjoyed the mode on Chain Chomp Desert, but it feels like it should be more frenetic. The smaller maps of prior games, not you Mario Kart 8 on Deluxe, added an element to stalking your prey, camping, cornering. There's just too much space in this mode, and Coin Battle, a side mode focused on gathering coins, stops being a battle at all as players just ignore each other. The battle mode just feels haphazard. I'd like to see the game introduce slightly smaller maps and updates. I think that would fix a lot of the issues I have with it. Guess that just leaves the open world, and it's an interesting addition. The open world is a contextualization of the track, something that was probably not necessary. I imagine most people would honestly prefer they didn't, but it also serves as a fun little playground. This isn't Forza Horizon, there aren't races to do. Hell, I really wish there were. Most tracks work backwards and forwards, although online you and friends could organize freeform races anywhere. Hell, the open world is dense with secret tracks, sections styled after Super Nintendo tracks, and a secret little race through Daisy's castle. Plus you could do tag or hide and seek, so it's not impossible. But some random event races, even just procedurally generated ones, would add a lot to the open world, I think. It's also worth noting that I think part of why the open world exists is for when you're queuing in lobbies on online, because you get sent to the open world and can explore a little and do some mini challenges and find some coins and stuff. So it works as a fun little loading screen when you're waiting between actual races. But for the most part, the open world is a bit of a collectathon, split up between short little challenges, usually driving through rings or collecting blue coins, lasting 10 to 45-ish seconds. Some of these are great, some not so much. There's a lot that show off the wall riding parkour type stuff and reveal shortcuts and other neat little mechanics, and others that are 10 seconds of driving on a highway. The rest of the stuff to find are question mark blocks and peach coins, but the game is so carefree that it doesn't even reveal approximate locations on the map or anything like that. It just tallies up your total, and you only need 10 of each of these collectibles to get mirror mode, which lets you do Grand Prix flipped horizontally. It's comfy, it's silly, it lets you practice shortcuts and learn layouts, but it's also ultimately a bit superfluous. I can imagine myself as a kid being lost for hours in the open world, and I think that's the main appeal, but it is easy to write off as kind of unexciting, especially if you're 30, you know? Mario Kart World is an unsurprisingly gorgeous game. It being the Switch 2's big launch title, maybe a little bit underwhelming. It's not quite a system pusher graphically, but the art style is strong and the variety in tracks is fantastic. Even more impressive since all of them, sans Rainbow Road, slot into the open world, with only Sky High Sundae standing out as kind of odd. The open world is huge, really huge, and completely seamless while still looking good. The world doesn't get too fancy in most places, but is dense with little details, extra areas like Daisy's castle, and with a general comfy vibe, vast stretches of land reaching out in all directions. There's not some unbelievably flashy art style, no cell shading or hugely stylized looks, just relaxing, cartoony but believable worlds. The tracks have a ton going on within this parameter too, not you Ice Cream Land. Winding mountains covered in train tracks, a desert bazaar with flower petals that explode when run into, several beaches ranging from a beach rave to a sunsetty shoreline, and a haunted movie theater. There's an odd cohesion despite how different these all are, all having those warm colors and comforting feel. Characters also have the interesting facet of being slightly redesigned, finally escaping the new era of sterile, dull stock art, with characters a bit more stylized, a bit more lively, and given a bit more personality. Best seen with Donkey Kong, who's been entirely redesigned to look like a giant teddy bear with big sunken eyes, but extending to everyone else. Daisy got her tan back, at least a little, and is much more energetic. Mario gets a lot of playful little animations, Luigi is more rigid than Mario, and pretty much anyone else. It's a simple style, but a generally pleasant one, especially when it comes to night tracks and open world stretches, which show off some of the very thoughtful lighting. Also, maybe it's cheating a little, but the soundtrack is great. Much of the music is fully orchestrated remixes of music from other games, some with both day and night themes, as many tracks can be played both ways, whether that be songs from past Mario Karts, literally all of them, mainline Mario games like Super Mario Bros., Super Mario World, Sunshine, Galaxy, and Odyssey, among others, but also beautifully redone music from games you wouldn't quite expect. All of the Mario games get a little bit of music, with the first game notably being used as a basis for desert areas around Daisy's castle. Mario Paint, Donkey Kong Country, Yoshi's Story, and even WarioWare appear. It's a fantastic collection, and the orchestrated big band sound just drives so much life into the game. Every track, every area, that almost jazzy sound that permeates the game just working so well. Even more so with the final lap, where the music gets jazzier and more energetic on every single track. The music also tends to have a lot more variety in where and when it plays. The open world has a number of songs depending on a number of factors, but this also extends into the routes, which often select from a selection of music related to the courses the player is traveling between, and changing every lap, which in the case of the routes is usually the halfway point and gives you a lot of nice variety as you go. As for the tracks, we'll start with the Mushroom Cup, the nice basic start, which has Donkey Kong as its rival and unlockable character. When are we getting a costume update including Bonanza outfits, Nintendo? It's already been like 6 days. The first track in the game is Mario Bros. Circuit. This archetype appears in pretty much every game and is usually a basic, kinda boring grass course, and this is still a very, very basic course with only tiny alternate paths and some rails to trick off of, although I think it manages to stand out well for the aesthetics, with a sort of southwestern vibe like radiator springs from cars. With sandy rock formations dotting the tracks, the big loop going on top of one, it is a basic first track, but it does good to stand out. There's really not much like it visually in the game, and it has some transitions that play it in reverse as the final lap, so that's pretty neat. Crown City has 4 layouts, which is kinda just a shame for it. The biggest weakness of the Grand Prix mode leading into many transitions, which leads you to only seeing some of the track. It was enough of a problem for one layout to show up in the Mushroom Cup, the fantastic rooftop section, while another shows up in the Shell Cup and mostly follows the trafficy highway areas, which I enjoy, although coming off of a transition is a little underwhelming, while the third track is only out of transitions and is a little chill beachy spot. Part of the problem is that this whole track is in an open world area, and they really wanted to have a fun little city to explore. They succeeded, but it does hurt the Grand Prix experience. The fourth layout is the combined layout for single races and time trials, and it's so good. It works like the city tracks from 8, slowly unraveling from the street level to the roofs and back down, although it does sometimes have the awkwardness of those tracks, in that until you memorize it, the only way you know where to go is via giant red arrows, and sometimes you fuck up and plow through them when you're learning it, which is applicable to some of the transitions too. Bonus for the giant bridge that leads into and out of it, top tier transition with the bridge supports being grindable, the boost panels, the bridge jump, awesome early course. Whistlestop Summit is the choo-choo level, and one of the best in the game for showing off the new mechanics. Not only are the train tracks grindable rails, but so are the edges of the tracks, so are the supports for the tiny train bridge, and hell, the cliff walls are too. All on top of this spiraling and looping mountainside overlooking everything while this dorky, catchy, folky song plays. The train moves with you, which means that while it is an obstacle to consider, it's a very reactable one that doesn't feel as chaotic as it could, for better and for worse, and there's some neat split paths that go over and under each other for some shenanigans. It's a simple and fun display of all of World's new mechanics. DK Spaceport is a silly gimmick track. Yep, it's 5 left turns, but each straightaway offers its own little escalation, going from dodging some barrels crossing the course in front of you, to a little girder maze for grinding, to a series of walls to ride on, then dodging Mecha DK, all wrapped in a little Donkey Kong arcade riff featuring remix music from that game that escalates with every left turn, adding an instrument each time until it becomes a full band with an electric guitar. It's a simple track, casually anyway, but it's such a fun little twist on the usual that I can't help but love it. The only real complaint I have is that the yellow floor and red walls are a little dull, with very little variety until Mecha Kong. That initial lead up, seeing the tower in the distance, is great, but I don't know, changing the color up some on a course you drive exclusively at an upward incline looking at the sky might be nice. Overall, great start. The Mushroom Cup is wall-to-wall bangers, aesthetically, musically. It's got a good mix of the basics, the new mechanics, the gimmicky. It's a perfect introduction. The Flower Cup is the only cup composed solely of retro tracks and has a loose desert theme, only broken up at the ends, with Daisy as its rival. First stop, Desert Hills from Mario Kart DS, but it's also appeared in Wii. This got to be the first track instead of Crown City. It wasn't even a particularly good track the first 2 times. Desert Hills is probably the worst real track in the game. There's just not a lot here. It's a sandy circle, you take a few turns, ride through the sand dunes, go down a tiny curvy path, then repeat. Even aesthetically, it's very weak and repetitive, largely consisting of sand, with its coolest features being the starting line planted into a tiny oasis, and the inclusion of the Moai heads from Mario Land, which ties into the area leading into the next course, which features Daisy's castle. This is far and away the least interesting track in the game in my opinion, and it's really not even close. And no, you can do it in reverse, it's not any better. In stark contrast to that is Shy Guy Bazaar from Mario Kart 7, and Tour as well. And this is another absolute banger. Shy Guy Bazaar was already a fun little romp through a crowded market, but World adds so many layers, in a literal sense. Even from moment 1, ropes can be used to bypass the crowded market sections and take to the roofs, with awnings and ropes weaving in and out over most of the map. An optimal, difficult route that doesn't give you items, but lets you avoid many of them, and where falling means landing back in the market area. Almost every second of this map has some little optional route, like these little rails off to the sides, or this tiny little area you can shortcut through with a mushroom. It's probably the retro course in the game best redesigned for Worlds, playing into its mechanics so damn well, while still offering the original solid course beneath. Also, certain transitions for this track lead into Daisy's castle, which is a pretty simple winding section, but is a very cool example of a unique thing they can do with the transition courses, and should have been done a lot more to keep the transitions exciting. Speaking of redesigns, Wario Stadium from 64 doesn't even vaguely resemble the original long, bumpy, awkward mud pit outside of being a Wario-themed stadium, and one of the craziest shows of World's parkour stuff. On the ground, it's a series of rally jumps that lead into a huge one with an explosion, which is a lot of fun, but it's extremely rare to see good players touch the ground at all. The walls that surround the stadium and the rails on top of them offer little incentive to go down for how many wacky tricks can be used to turn this track inside out. I'm not good at all that stuff, but it is incredible to see speedruns of this stage. The aesthetic is really fun too, like a trashy, kinda still under construction rallycross area, with construction stuff still littered all over over its center, and it has a fantastic version of the original song. This is one of the most drastic and impressive redesigns in this game, completely salvaging the otherwise dull course. Another absolute banger, and also has some reverse transitions for bonus points. Finally, Airship Fortress, first in DS, but also in 7 and Tour. This track was always great, and is just a touch better now. One of the coolest aesthetics and songs in the game, a swift ride into one of Bowser's airships past bonsai bills, weaving through some moving flamethrowers, jumping over to a castle, and making a big drift down to the bottom. And actually hanging above the open world gives it some great views, even if it limits opportunities for routes to reach it in cooler, weird ways. This course remains almost identical to its prior version, no real reason to build on perfection. There are a few rails added here and there, mainly to avoid the bonsai bills and to make the fire section a little more fun to tie it all together. It's always been a banger course, and it still is. The Flower Cup, it has the worst track in the game by a long shot, and that's the only track you get to go through fully in the Grand Prix mode. However, the latter 3 tracks are some of the game's best. One simple switch could have made this the best set of courses in the game, but alas. The Star Cup has a generally icy theme, but mixes it up in a lot of little ways, and has a very different finale. As may be obvious hearing that, its rival is Rosalina. From here on, every cup will have some blend of old and new. This cup begins with DK Pass, which originates from DS and has since been in 7 and Tour. The layout is virtually unchanged, but the course has gotten a nice visual update. Before it was a curvy, snowy slope, then back down a hill. Here it's converted into DK's ski slope, full of jumps. The path up to it now an icy road with snowballs rolling through it. I love that initial road climb, the way it weaves back and forth, the cool speedrun tricks to hop over the gaps, and the downhill looks out over a cool landscape. It's a kind of middle of the road track to play through unless you're doing some wacky speedrun shit, not all that exciting, but the music is fantastic and it's generally pretty good, plus another one that can be done backwards off of some of the transitions. Starview Peak is a Rosalina-themed ice palace in the sky. It's one of the more simple layouts in the game, but is a fun little drifting course and looks fucking incredible. The melding of the stained glass and ice look and the cozy library at the end of the track are very nice. It's not nearly as wacky as everything else the game has to offer, but it's a very nice break from the general craziness for something pretty and simple. Sky High Sundae is the only track originally from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Tour, which it released for originally near simultaneously through the booster pass for Mario Kart 8 and via an update for Tour. The course is maybe the one that fits the world the least, being kinda gaudy and fantastical. A nice change of pace, but odd in the context of the open world. In 8, this track felt really weird. It was a track that had railings all over for the purpose of anti-gravity boosting off of them awkwardly. I'm inclined to believe the theory that this track was made for World and ported back for some reason. The original version, which this is mostly unchanged from, was a pretty boring pill-shaped track with awkward out-of-place stuff all over. Here, it's a decent track with one really cool trick, wall tricking into this sharp corner repeatedly to save some time, and there's some rails to grind on. It's undoubtedly better here, even if it is still kind of ugly and a little bit middling. Spooky tracks are an easy way to win my heart. Wario Shipyard first appeared in 7, then Tour, and was largely an underwater course. This time reinvented to be a water riding course, as all water courses are in this game. Usually the water courses can be a tad dull, but the rough waves of the Shipyard are a nice addition that at least gives you some trick opportunities, even if the randomness of the waves sometimes eats your charge jumps and drifts. Although like many water-based courses, it does end up feeling a little flat, even with an occasional trip onto a sunken pirate ship or through a cave decorated by Sans Wario or a rail grind. It's one of the better water courses in the game, especially at night for its spooky green lighting, but it is a water course. The Star Cup is alright. None of the courses are huge standouts, none are huge blemishes. It's a course with surprisingly simple tracks sans the eye-searing Sundae, but they tend to be comfortable, good-looking ones with fun music. The Shell Cup doesn't have a huge overarching theme, but does end in some modern city areas. The rival here is Lakitu. Hold in your excitement. I know, Lakitu, he's back. The first course is Koopa Troopa Beach, which was Koopa Beach in Super Mario Kart, and like all super courses, reappeared in Super Circuit, but the course has also reappeared in DS and Tour, and it's definitely a choice for an opening course. The course was always a small, kinda wonky circle, but now it is quite literally a small circle around the center of an island. It's this game's baby park. A 5-lap chaos pit where all that matters are items, which can occasionally be fun, especially since this is a 24-man chaos race, but is usually just a die roll. Also, some transitions do this track backwards, which is about as exciting as a flat circle can be backwards. To its credit, reinventing the track as a giant beach rave, including the music, is fun, but it's a course that's a tiny little ball of chaos, something that hits the spot sometimes and sometimes it doesn't. Faraway Oasis has an interesting African savanna thing going on, with lots of decorative wood platforms at its foundation. It's to some extent a water track when played casually, but almost every stretch of water has some higher route, or rails, or solid ground that can be used to bypass a lot of the water. And the final waterfall drift is extremely gorgeous. While there are no reverse transitions that lead into this course, it always starts with some animals running on the track alongside you, always acting as fairly predictable obstacles, but ones that change up depending where you're coming from, which is a kind of neat little intro to the track. It's pretty good, one of the better water courses in the game, if only because it rewards good play with less water and for its great aesthetic. Crown City reappears in Shell Cup in a worse form as I discussed earlier, so let's hit Peach Stadium, the track that takes place through Peach's castle in the center of the map, which, like Crown City, appears across 2 cups with different layouts. The Shell Cup layout is awful, utilizing the terminal area under the track, which is also used in the battle mode, which is literally 4 left turns and some traffic. The lead up is cool, the big highway leading up and all the peach blossoms, but it is such a boring finale to this cup. The awful part is that the Special Cup version includes the actual track, also seen in the time trials, and it's pretty damn good. A fun, drifty, short, and vertical track that assuredly would have been an anti-gravity track in 8. It's not a mind-blowing track or anything, but a very pretty one, especially at night, and a strong entry to the Special Cup. Shell might be the weakest cup overall. Its finale is the worst versions of 2 good tracks from the other cups, and its opener is a mixed bag play on Baby Park. It has one really solid track in there, but even that's a water track when played casually. It has some of the prettiest transitions, but is one of the cups with the weakest overall selection by far. The Banana Cup is a great return to form though, with some great variety across the board, and with Birdo as a rival, and a double dash return beginning with the first course. Peach Beach, first seen double dash and returning in Wii before this. The first lap is basically identical to before, with the Cataquax as obstacles on the beach, but with water riding smoothing out the movement some, while the latter 2 laps cut through the town and castle at the center. Lap 2 is fantastic, a short little section with tons of awnings and ropes to play with, although unfortunately section 3 is a very, very dull and flat water section. Still, that first 2/3 is great, and it's another wonderful course at night, which it transitions to throughout a single race, and is mostly a fun twist on the original. Salty Speedway is a good water course, largely for its gorgeous Venetian canal stylings, which is just kinda cheating when it comes to making something attractive, but the stage generally has pretty good variety. The walls of the canal on both sides offer lots of little spots to leave the water, and the little waterfall is a fun set piece. There's a brief lull near the end where the water becomes mandatory, but it's still a hell of a track with a great song. I'm a huge sucker for anything Sunshine. Dino Jungle's another double dash course, this one having reappeared in 7 and 2 previously, and holy, the retheming of this course is great. The original's a fun little trip through jungle with some Noshis walking around. They're sauropods that give Yoshi a kind of Goofy and Pluto situation, but they are cute. World completely rethemes this course into a Jurassic Park homage. There's still a little bit of jungle, but a bulk of the track is an overgrown lab of some kind, and the dinosaurs are much more active, roaming the track against the racers. The Triceratops serving as a ramp, the Brachiosaurus along rails to reach higher areas, and the T-Rex pushing through a wall near the end before beginning to stomp around the course as an obstacle. It's a subtly dynamic track with some of the coolest little changes throughout each lap, an absolute masterpiece. Great Question Mark Block Ruins has so many implications on the lore I can't imagine. Who turned a sky island into a shrine for question mark blocks, and why and when? How long have they been around? Have they always existed? The track is so visually unique and interesting, and the layout is really fun too, being a sort of drifting course, but with its place in the sky giving lots of wacky opportunities for skips and jumps and tricks. The most infamous one in the game occurring here, although even casually the bouncy clouds serve to divvy up the track along a few alternate paths after the big curves, which reconvene towards the end. It's a simple and straightforwardly good track on its face, but it's just so damn impressive at a high level too. The Banana Cup could probably stand to be a little less watery at the start, especially as water transitions tend to be some of the dullest, slowing the game to a relative crawl. But still, most of Peach Beach is great. Salty Salty is a prime water course. Dino Jungle is top 5 in this game, and Great Question Mark Block Runes is the coolest track in the game to watch good people play, and a pretty good one to play yourself. It's an all-around fantastic selection, one of the strongest cups. The Leaf Cup features 4 of the most out there tracks in the game, each vastly different in its design, playstyle, and aesthetics, which is great. It's easily the cup with the strongest variety, and has King Boo as its rival, who's the star of the show on one of the courses. This also happens to be the last cup with only wholly new tracks. Cheep Cheep Falls is an autumnal Japanese river surrounded by some sort of summer festival with food stalls and stuff, and beautiful browning maple trees. This is a bit of a water level, with its latter half being a ride down a flowing river, but the water feels very fast because it's moving with you, and there are rocks all over within it for tricks, and walls to ride on both sides. The track is also just gorgeous. Fairly short, but a beautiful atmospheric little area with a brief ride under its titular waterfall and across a small bridge, while very pleasant music plays. Dandelion Depths serves as the game's only cave level, kinda surprising. It begins with some drifting as it leads into a subterranean pool filled with dandelions and their floating spores bathed in a blue glow. The constant ridges and tiny waterfalls along the way keep it from being a dull water section. It's actually rather fast paced, we're constantly throwing boosts at you. This is a very nice looking level once it reaches the cave, but it feels like maybe it should have some obstacles somewhere. A lot of the courses in this game neglect the track-based chaos, and there is something a bit too safe about this one, I think. Although maybe it'd be a bit much with all the item chaos. I don't know, I'd like some more gimmicky courses, I think. Boo Cinema is one of my favorite levels in the game. I mean, of course it would be. It's a movie theater at Ghost level and has fantastic music. The track's design is a fairly straightforward drifting level with a little upper area in the movie, but it's just the style of the thing. The game matches the countdown in the movie starting just as you fly through the screen, where you ride around the film reel in a sepia tone before bursting back out into a crowd of haunted ushers. It's not the most impressive level to play, but it is my favorite, like, atmospherically, visually, hands down, not even close. Dry Bones Burnout is the obligatory volcano level. The level is very winding, with a constant stream of upper routes on narrow platforms that wind back and forth between each other, which is a surprisingly rare little bit of freedom in the tracks. The lava around the track can cause players to get picked up by Lakitu, but unlike prior games where lava was instant death, it's not instantaneous. Instead, there's a short grace period which allows for some fun shortcuts with boosting items. The stage isn't nearly as flashy as the other ones in the cup, although the glowing reds are nice, and there's a cool kinda Dry Bones gateway here, but it's also a very fun track in general. The Leaf Cup is a very solid collection of tracks, some of my favorite in the game aesthetically, if not the craziest to actually play. It's just a top 3 cup for its variety alone. The Lightning Cup features mostly old tracks, serving as a surprisingly low-key finale to the default courses, save for the end. Bowser Jr. is the rival here, by the way. The cup starts on Moo Moo Meadows from Wii, which also had appeared in 8. It's kinda rare for tracks to reappear so often and so close together. The course is extremely basic in most regards, although its bumpy terrain does allow for some tricks, and the cows serve as obstacles, but it really is just a huge circle. Speedrunners, of course, have split in half, but for the most part it's a pretty straightforward and basic track. Not bad, not great. Also, this one can be done in reverse from some transitions because, you know, it's like a big flat circle. Choco Mountain has seen a dramatic and controversial retheming. The original first appeared in 64 as a literal Choco Mountain and would reappear in DS Tour and 8 Deluxe's Booster Course Pass. The course is now what appears to be an oil mining rig of chocolate, for some reason under the control of Charge and Chucks, who serve as the most recurring obstacle in this course. Meanwhile, the giant rolling boulders that served as the most iconic part of the track originally only appear in one brief section where they really aren't that much of a danger to you. The track isn't bad, but it does feel a lot more plain than its original version, which was already a bit on the plain end. It's a bit of a downgrade on its prior version, which is rare for this game. Toad's Factory first appeared in the Wii and has since appeared in... that's it. Toad's Factory was always a great course, the floor that pushes with or against the racers, and that section where they're moving horizontally to you and sliding you side to side while you weave between boxes, the giant stampers, the section with the platforms being moved back and forth. The layout remains almost identical to the prior version, with the addition of some upper routes to reach in interior sections, and some girders to grind on right as the race closes. It's an already fantastic track that didn't need a lot of work, just a few alternate paths and a great new rendition of its great music. Bowser's Castle is Bowser's Castle. I love that they reuse the red carpet thing from Super Circuit here, and still play with Podobos hopping out of grates and lava, which acts like it does on the Dry Bones course. The course does have some minor alternate paths, facilitated by rails in the interiors in the early section, but largely it's a dangerous and chaotic course when played normally. There's a part towards the end where lightning strikes start happening, and they're indicated by little things, and you have to weave back and forth between them. You gotta jump through a giant Bowser statue mouth. It's awesome, and absolutely bonkers speedrun too, just like question mark block runes. I absolutely love the visuals here, going through the lava tunnel into a big storm cloud, then being on floating platforms above the castle and reapproaching it. Some of the coolest stuff in this game, by far visually. Just a great finale to the default courses. The Lightning Cup is great. Choco Mountain is a bit of a dud, and Moo Moo Meadow is always just okay, but those last two are some absolute top tier tracks. Completing all of the above unlocks the Special Cup, which itself leads to the credits. This course has no unlockable character rival, but is still a great finale. Beginning on Acorn Heights, the track centers on a gigantic tree and the gigantic plants at its base, which makes you feel very tiny, which is unique and cute. The track is full of all sorts of little things, big things I guess to you. The middle section is giant leaves and vines and plants to grind off of, glide off of, jump to walls from, and their placement ends up offering tons of little paths and routes leading directly into a hill with giant acorns rolling down a split bunch of paths. It's a ridiculously strong track and a great start to the cup. Mario Circuit is a very interesting retro track. The thing is, Super Mario Kart tracks tend to get adapted in kind of boring ways, usually being meandering, wide, flat tracks unless someone is really inspired to redo them into something interesting. This track goes the full mile, combining Mario Circuits 1, 2, and 3 from Super into one track, switching between them every lap in order, with different transitions entering at different laps. All themed around being a tiny little go-kart raceway with bleachers for an audience. Mario Circuit 1 has appeared in Super, Super Circuit, DS and Tour. Mario Circuit 2 has appeared in Super, Super Circuit 7 and Tour, and 3 in Super, Super Circuit, Wii Tour, and 8 Deluxe's Booster Course packs. The track doesn't do anything too fancy, it's quite flat and basic, but the twisting design and combination of these three tracks makes it one of the more exciting courses. It's a really great reinvention, even if it is on the simple side. Peach's Stadium Good version finally shows up. It's such a relief to see it, and it leads directly into this game's iteration of Rainbow Road, which is an absolute marathon. A 6 or 7 minute long, straightforward track that doesn't really care to utilize rails or wall rides or any of World's new stuff. Instead being a visual and audio treat that focuses purely on being Mario Karts. The 4 segments each switching up the track's aesthetics and intensifying the music, going from a fairly standard curvy layout as had been seen before in the games, to a brief speed-up section, a cosmic river on a series of flying islands, to the interior of a satellite, kinda like Mario Kart 8's Rainbow Road, which is a spiraling retro-inspired section, complete with rainbow thwomps smashing into the ground, and then into branch paths of twisting roads spiraling to the end. The track is absolutely gorgeous. The train from Mario Kart 64 appears, carrying the various NPCs from the game. The whole planet is visible from up in the sky where you race on this track, and towards the end you're traveling back down towards it. The rainbows, the starry blue of the water, and while the track isn't as crazy as some of the others, it is absolutely fantastic to go back to every once in a while. The Special Cup is truly special. The courses have a good mix old and new. Rainbow Road is absolute peak. Peach Stadium gets to actually shine. Acorn Heights shows off the new mechanics incredibly well. It's a great finale. For now, anyway. Mario Kart World is a fantastic continuation of Mario Kart. It was hard to imagine where the series would go after 8 and its almost comical 96 courses, which kinda just felt like the end of the line. World is forced to strip that number back to a more reasonable 30, but the mechanical changes have really given it a strong set of legs to stand on. The improved trick system and the parkour are such fun additions that are simple and easy to understand, not adding any extra buttons, but let almost every course stand out some just for having them in the game, without putting off less technical players either, and allowing freedom in general. And that freedom runs deep in the open world, which isn't my favorite thing in the world, but is an addition I would have loved as a kid. A good majority of the tracks are fantastic, with only a few major sore spots, and while the transitions remain a point of contention, I think they see great use in the Knockout Tour and as excuses to turn some tracks around. It's hard to believe this will be the end of Worlds. I'd be surprised to see anything less than a doubling of the track roster if not further, and I'm curious to see how these get integrated into the open world, or if they'll have their own tiny open worlds for each DLC pack or something. There's really not much to complain about. As the first introduction of the Switch 2, it's a beautiful and fantastically orchestrated little game, and a great twist on what came before. I'm looking forward to seeing it develop as it goes, and seeing what wacky tracks come out of it. Also, yeah, I know this isn't a retrospective, the game is new, but it would look weird in the playlist otherwise. I'll see you when the DLC drops.